It's a great pleasure to welcome today the new Associate Conductor of the Sun Valley Music Festival, Stephanie Childress. So I thought we might start by just going over how sort of your entrance into the world of conducting. Nobody comes out as a newborn and starts waving their arms around.
Well, thank goodness for that.
Yes, indeed. But your background is as a very, very accomplished violinist. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that part of your life and when conducting came onto the scene for you?
Well, music sort of came in as a complete surprise. My parents are not classical musicians. They're not involved in the arts either. But I remember very vividly at the age of 4 watching a concert in France where Nigel Kennedy was performing with the Polish Chamber Orchestra. And my parents allegedly, I was absolutely mesmerized and couldn't take my eyes off him and was entranced by his performance. And that's when I started asking for violin lessons. I started playing the violin and eventually it became a serious hobby, but a hobby nonetheless. It wasn't a vocation in any way, and I didn't see myself becoming a professional violinist. I was much more interested in sports and learning languages, and I wanted to be either, I remember, an architect or a spy. Those were my 2 career paths. Eventually, at the age of 12, 13, I started playing in orchestras, as a youth orchestras, and started falling in love with the idea of making music as a collective. And not only that, but I started getting in touch and working with better and better conductors. One of those conductors being Edward Gardner, who at the time was the music director of the English National Opera in London. And I really enjoyed working with him. And as a very shy 13-year-old, I came up to him after a rehearsal and asked him if I could just come and observe some of his opera rehearsals in the theatre at the Colosseum. He very kindly agreed. I have no idea why. And I remember I spent about a year and a half skipping school and just going and watching rehearsals all day. And that particular season, they had a gorgeous program of De Rosenkavalier, Britten's Billy Budd, and Britten's Death in Venice. And those 3 operas really changed my life. And it really is due to my newfound love of opera at the time that I decided I wanted to become a conductor. Not only did I want to become a musician, but I also wanted to start conducting, all through this newfound love of opera. And to cut a long story short, I went to university, studied music, and, here I am.
And how old were you when that kind of transition of focus took place?
I didn't really start conducting until I was maybe 15 or slightly older, but I caught the bug, let's say, when I was 12, 13.
Let me ask you about this, because it certainly sticks out for me in my life. The very first time you got up in front of a group of musicians and conducted, what was that, and how did it feel at the time?
The first time I stood up in front of a group of musicians, it was a very small group. I didn't know about the beat patterns. I wasn't aware of, how to give a downbeat properly. It just, someone asked me, Stephanie, just come up and wave around and see what happens. And it was terrifying, but also exhilarating. And I think that's a feeling, those 2 feelings are feelings that I chase even now. As a professional, the feeling that anything can happen, that you are with a group of people that not only you trust, but you can unleash something, not only in them, but for the audience as well.
I'm Absolutely. So glad to hear you say that, because that mirrors almost exactly my first experience as a conductor as well, which was utterly terrifying and under the similar circumstances. But you still very much carried the violin with you to this day, in fact, but very actively during your teens, because you went very, very far in the very prestigious Young Musician of the Year, the BBC Young Musician of the Year competition.
Yes, that's right, in 2016 and 2018. I kept on playing the violin because I feel as a conductor, or someone who wanted to be a conductor at the time, it was really important for me personally, especially the way that I grew up making music, to continue doing so with other people. And, as a violinist, especially when you're in a section, for example, you really learn how to shape the sound that you want, or how to interpret someone's ideas of what the sound should be like. And I always say that I think I learned more from playing in orchestras about how to be a conductor than any professor has ever taught me.
So when you're studying a score today, do you take out the violin and play through passages and feel about phrasing and come up with some bowings? Is that something that's part of your routine?
Now it is, yes. I don't play publicly anymore, and I took a hiatus from the violin for about 2 or 3 years. But for me, it's a really great way of staying in touch with the sound. And I do find that if I'm not playing something, either the piano very badly or the violin, then sometimes I do feel as though my contact with the sound and also the ideas that I have about the sound are just a tiny bit more vague. And I'm sure you know this, Alice. So it's you want to discover things as you're rehearsing, but also you do need to come in with a clear idea that can then be mellowed out depending on what the people in front of you are doing.
Let's go to Sun Valley for a second, because something that people may not know is that while you are new to the Sun Valley Music Festival family, you actually have some connections to Idaho, and this summer won't be the first time that you were in Sun Valley.
Yes, it's a funny one. I think before coming to and living in Missouri, where I am now, the state I'd spent the most time in the US was, in fact, Idaho. My father's American, and he has 2 brothers who live in the north of Idaho, and we sort of spend winters skiing there sometimes, or enjoying the gorgeous weather and the gorgeous scenery during the summer. So I know Idaho pretty well, actually, which as a Brit is quite a funny thing. But no, I had the pleasure of coming to Sun Valley briefly for one concert last season for Daniel Trifonov's groundbreaking, piano-breaking interpretation of Brahms's first piano concerto. I mean, it was really quite something, and I really fell in love with not only the location but the auditorium and the feel of the place. And obviously, a lot of musicians from the St. Louis Symphony are involved in the festival, and just seeing them so happy and seeing them so inspired by not only you but their surroundings and just the community and the feel of the place, I definitely thought at the back of my mind, gosh, one day it'd be lovely to be a part of this. And lo and behold, here we are.
Sometimes things are meant to be. Let's talk a little bit about music education. You're going to be very much involved in our Music Institute in the students of the Advanced Chamber Student Program. I know that music education has, up until this point in your career, been important for you. Tell us a little bit about why that's the case.
It's the case because that's, for me, what made me want to become what helped me at least become a professional musician. I mean, as I said, my parents don't have a background in music, and so we really entered this world very much in the dark about the teachers, how to start even playing an instrument, how to start learning about theory, about playing with others, chamber music, all these things. And for me, I couldn't have done it without the help of some very, very important teachers in my life. I think also being in a youth orchestra for so long, I was in the National Youth Orchestra for 3 years. These are such formative, important experiences, and they really help form the next generation of musicians, or at least the next generation of music lovers. I think the biggest thing with music education, the biggest misconception, is that we're not necessarily training a generation of future artists. We just want people who love music and who want to share that love of music with others, who will either pass that on to their children, and will take their children to concerts, or buy the latest CD, or listen to classical music on Spotify. All of these things. It's really just creating a network of people who love the arts.
I am so grateful for the time that you spent with us today, and immensely excited to work with you in person and to welcome you to the orchestra and to the community this summer. So thank you for that so much, Stephanie. It's been lovely to chat with you.
It's an absolute honor for me, and I can't wait for us to work together as well.